yeah, yeah. No, I won't stop, I can't get enough, yeah, yeah. Dreams on scale, they ain't big enough, yeah, yeah. No, I won't stop, I can't get enough, yeah, yeah.
There are no judgments on feelings,
right?
Okay, only actions. Not to say that every feeling is correct, but it's legitimate because it's a feeling.
If we're talking and she says, you know, I'm sorry. Now I believe it's sincere, but she can say the same two words. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's the same two words,
right?
But the text message is making me wonder, which one is she using right now?
Okay, that's fair.
It doesn't matter which one you use. It's which one works best for you to accomplish the goal of resolving and identifying the issue and resolving it. I'm not married to an entrepreneur. I'm married to a woman who happens to be an entrepreneur. And so how you see things and how you profess them is it's gonna determine a whole lot about how you behave.
We become professional blamers. And instead of understanding that the challenge that we're facing in our lives is designed to teach us something, we get all off track trying to assess blame. And then that becomes the focus.
There we go. All righty.
Are we live?
I think we are live. Welcome, everybody.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. I've actually shrunk us a little bit here. Let me go to a large. There we go. There we go. There we go. Happy Sunday, everybody. Happy Sunday all over the world. Let us know where you're chiming in from. I see we have people telling us already that they're from Arizona. That's watching already, and Maryland that's watching. If you're a first timer on the show as well, I know we have Chicago in there. If you're a first timer or an all timer, let us know by saying first time or all, and that you've watched every episode that we've had from our home to yours. And so we want to give you guys a moment to kind of introduce yourself. And let us know, did you recommend somebody for this week's call? We said that we weren't going to let you on this week if you didn't refer somebody.
Okay. Did we say that?
I said it last week. I did say it last week. Yeah.
Everybody's
no, I'll kick them off. No, we need to increase our budget. So
okay.
we said that we would kick them off if they didn't refer someone. So I had you call your mom, right?
Yeah, but she's not the grocery store.
She got her phone. She got her cell phone. She got Facebook on that phone. Okay. Anyway, but we call some people and let them know to get on this call here today. Today's call is going to be a little, I guess you call it special, a little different. I know we had talked about having some plans from last week about what we were going to talk about. We were going to talk about money matters, talk about finances last week. And but we're going to do a little curveball today. Put a message out on Facebook and on Instagram recently. And, right now we've been faced with a lot of challenges.
Right.
The world has been challenged. I mean, all over the place. Obviously first, with a health crisis, a pandemic, a life interruption that took place a few months ago. And people have lost lives. People have had to rearrange everything. They've lost income, lost jobs. Some have lost hope. Some have been separated from loved ones. Some have not been able to see loved ones. Some have memories that they, that they'll never forget. And I know that I lost an uncle. And one of the things that was really shocking was he died alone. His wife was not able to go to the hospital to see him. And my uncle, he died of a stroke. And the complications of that stroke just days later took his life, and he was in there by himself. Wife couldn't go to the hospital. Sons, daughters, my cousins, they couldn't go to the hospital and see him. And I'm thinking of all the people who went through that.
Right. Yeah.
And still going through it, for whatever those reasons are, obviously they say it's for safety reasons and things of that nature, but at the same time, it's rough. I had one of our people who work very closely with us, developer, his father passed away from Corona. And he said that when his dad passed away, 7 hours later, they were burying him. So even he was wanting to get on the plane and go over to Brazil to be with his mother and to see his dad. Mm-hmm. He couldn't, the plane ride takes longer to get there than the time from between death and burial. So we've been faced with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot to adjust to. And even though you understand the reason for it, it doesn't make it any less easier.
That's right. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. It doesn't make it easier at all.
Right.
And over the last week, a horrific issue or action, whatever we want to call it, I don't even know the words for it right now, took place when obviously George Floyd life was taken from him. And in my opinion, obviously in public opinion, unjustly, was wrong. And it was inexcusable. And that alone has sparked so much unrest around the entire world. So today we decided, we can talk money matters anytime. Today we decided we want to come on and we want to hear from you. We want to discuss, and just our show is the same. It's real. We have prepared things for today, and but it's real, and we want to hear from you. We want your comments on here. I'll tell you what it's designed to do. It's not designed to charge up any emotions. That's not what the purpose of this episode is for. It's not designed to call action for people to pick a political side or party or anything of that nature. We are in a state of war, and everybody should be impacted, okay, by this. You're going to hear us, obviously, because we've got the video camera here. We've got the microphone. We're going to hear our opinions on it. Some would say, oh, you're risking a lot in your business going on talking about such a issue that is so divided. I want to go ahead and share this with you. We didn't get wealthy and start a company so that we can keep our mouths quiet when real change is needed. if someone looks at us and say, well, you know what, they have an opinion that's different than mine, and so I no longer want to participate in their business, I think it would be a compliment to us. That's the way I feel.
Well, I mean, I just think that we have to understand that this world is big enough to survive more than one perspective.
It's true.
And we have to gain a little bit more tolerance and exposure to different schools of thought. That's what being progressive is all about. Just because I may not agree with your perspective doesn't mean that it's not real to you, and it doesn't mean that it's not as a result of your experiences. And so, you know, part of our job as leaders is to say the things that people can't say. And they don't need our help to say the things they can say.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You're right on that. But it's not a risk. I think the biggest risk for us is being silent. That's our biggest risk. That's the way I look at it, because I think history will judge us on our voice or our silence.
Well, especially when you have a platform and other people are depending on you to share your points of view. It's not that we are here to sway anyone either way. That's not necessarily our job. Our job is to start the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because the challenge is we haven't had the discussion completely enough.
We haven't.
And there's been a lot of talk. There hasn't been a lot of change.
Right. And so I guess I'll even start off with this. We don't have all the answers.
Right.
I don't want you to come in here thinking that because we are experts in business and experts in leadership, I don't say expert, we're always growing, but experienced in leadership, I don't want you to think that we have all the answers. And our role and our job and responsibility here is not to give you or to teach you what to think. Our role here is simply opening up dialogue so that you could learn a different way to process your feelings and hear other sides, other perspectives, not necessarily that's opposite than yours. It may even be the same perspective, the same side of that you believe, but you may hear it differently,
right,
and understand it differently. Because one of the things that I know is that we typically run with thought processes or jargon or colloquialisms that we've heard passed on and on. And when we hear those, they go into our brain, and then that's kind of our tag, or that's how we respond to things. And I see a whole lot of that going on now. Let me give you an example. Let's start off. I want to start off with Black Lives Matter. I want to start off with that. Okay. When you hear the term Black Lives Matter, what comes to your mind? Is the first thing comes to your mind, yeah, but all lives matter? Yeah, but what about Hispanic lives? Yeah, but what about Middle Eastern lives? Yeah, but what about those lives? What about white lives? What about blue lives? Talking about police. Because I hear a lot of that. And I want to give you my perspective on it so that you can see it, at least from the perspective that I see it. I think the movement, and I think the cause and the start of it, the initiation of it, the three women who actually started it, and it was started around the time that Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman in Florida. I think the initiation of it has merit, and I stand behind it. I stand for what that mission is for, and I do believe it. Let me share with you why. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean white lives don't matter. Doesn't mean that.
Or any other life.
Or any other life doesn't matter.
Right.
There's no different when in the month of October, the United States and much of the world, we put on pink ribbons. Why? For what?
Breast cancer.
For breast cancer. I want you to imagine people walking around saying, well, what about colon cancer? Why don't you put a brown ribbon on for colon cancer? Or why don't you put this ribbon on here or you know, for pancreatic cancer or brain cancer or lung cancer?
Right.
No, it is that there were people who stood up for the fight against breast cancer, and that was their cause. Why? Because that's what was close to home. That's what they saw that was being affected, and they wanted to fight against. And so when you hear Black Lives Matter, regardless of what your ethnicity is, don't be offended because Black Lives Matter. Don't try to be over-inclusive at that moment. Okay? All lives do matter. But the statement just says, here's something we need to bring attention to, because here's where the disproportion of institutional racism or institutional depravity, institutional disadvantage has been spotlighted. And here's where I want to pick up arms, and here's where I want to say, let me bring some change to this. I mean, you with me on that?
Yeah, yes, I am. I mean, it's no different than, shedding a light on breast cancer is so significant to me because I have had several family members who died from breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The same way there are other people who may have an affiliation of some sort for diabetes, because maybe some people in their family are affected by that. It does not mean that one is greater than the other. It means that all of these issues are something that we should be talking about. Mm-hmm. And it takes a certain group of people who are motivated not just to sit around and think and feel, they're motivated into action to bring awareness to certain things. And so I feel like that's where our sensitivity as human beings and as Americans, even because, we happen to live in the greatest country in the world, a country that I'm very disappointed in right now, to be honest with you. We should be talking about these things, and we should be educating ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we should be supporting when it's an issue that affects one of us. Sometimes I feel like we think that because breast cancer is not affecting our family right now, then it's an issue that we shouldn't be concerned about. Well, we don't know what's going to happen generations to come, and hopefully there's enough research money there and enough eyeballs on an issue so that women get the protection that they need. Maybe you don't have children today, but maybe mm-hmm. you might have a daughter. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, it's one of those things that we don't have to have all of the answers today. We just need to be willing and open enough to have the conversation, mm-hmm. and not be afraid of what's on the other side.
Right. Yeah, and that's what it is, because I want to just like I said, I don't have all the answers, and it's not about me being right, and it's not about me being wrong. It's perspective. I come to this call today, number one, as a human, because we have a human problem.
We do.
I come to this call as a human first, who happens to be African American, mm-hmm. who happens to be a Black man, right. A Black woman. So it affects all of us in so many different proportions. But I wanted to at least state that, because that's one of the biggest clashes that I see so often, is that as soon as someone or Black Lives Matter is there, it's shunned. There's so much disdain. There's so much, there's so many accusations as this group of people, or the cause for standing up for something, that now they're militant. Right. Or they are rebellious, and that may be the case for many, But I think the cause of standing up for something, somebody's got to spark something. It has to start somewhere.
Yeah, somebody's got to start the conversation.
The conversation has to be started,
right.
Completely. I'm grateful. I am grateful, however, when I'm watching and I've seen some of the protests. We'll talk about that. We'll get into some questions here as well. I'm grateful to see so many different ethnicities who are participating in this. And from my perspective, guys, I want to say this here. When it comes to George Floyd, this rioting, this protesting, the looting, the violence, the stealing, all of that, that's a separate conversation, and we can have talk about that, but that's not about just George Floyd. Okay? And the reason it's not about just George Floyd is that would be a huge disrespect to so many lives that have been lost that you don't hear about.
Right. The ones that aren't captured by cell phone.
Right. The ones that you don't see, and the ones that you do see where justice wasn't served. But I think George Floyd's death was so untimely and so in your face and so careless and so demeaning that people saw it firsthand. And it was the tipping point for what is now taking place in terms of the way people are protesting all over the world, around the world. And I think it sparked it.
Well, I still haven't been able to watch the full video. This honestly hit me differently. I can't even explain why. I wanted to make a post, and honestly, it took me 2 days to even come up with the words. And even then, I don't feel that I could adequately express just the turmoil and almost rage that I felt. Outside of being an African-American woman, I'm also the mother of an African-American man. Mm-hmm. And it frightens me that my son could be somewhere and I couldn't protect him. Mm-hmm. Not because he did anything wrong, not because he didn't follow instructions, not because he was actually guilty of anything, not because he had a gun, but because he was Black and he wears dreadlocks. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous thing. And then just the thought of there being other officers that were there that watched this man die and did nothing. Mm-hmm. That is the reason why I feel that they all should be charged. Mm-hmm. Because he was handcuffed, he was face down on the floor, he didn't have any weapons. I don't know who he could have been a threat to. Mm-hmm. And it's just unexplainable to me. And I've never been a fan of violence. I haven't had a fight since 5th grade. So I don't agree with violence. Up until recently, I didn't even own a gun. So, but I understand the frustration and the anger that's being displayed in the world right now. I think it sometimes takes this to get the right people's attention. Mm-hmm. And I just, I wish somebody would tell us what else we could do. Mm-hmm. Because there comes a point where you have to fight for your freedom, and you've got to fight for what you believe in, and you've got to stand up for the people who are hurting. And I think that time is now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a very difficult time. There's so many different perspectives that you'll hear, and we don't want to, we're not going to take it up all with preaching our preaching to you. We want to hear from you as well, and we want you to bring your questions here that you have. And today I'm not taking any questions on business. Please don't ask me any business questions right now. We can rebuild. We can build a business at any time. Today is about what's taking place, and maybe you just want to sit on a call and be a listener and we're fine with that. If you have questions, we'd love to take your questions as well. And I want to jump right into questions right away.
Okay, I got a question.
Right, give me 1 second. We're going to jump right into some questions as well, but and if you're confused, if you don't even know how to feel and you need guidance, some people need permission to grieve. They need permission to be angry. Sometimes, because you have to remember the way that we do things is taught behavior. We talked about that last week when we talked about grieving.
Right.
In a household, when something like this happens, it may be that in your household where you grew up, it was a mentioned conversation. Did you hear what happened to the man who got killed? And that be the end of the conversation. In many households, that's what takes place. And so right now, you had a chance to see it. Maybe you grow up and with a whole different perspective, and you're stuck because you don't even know, how should I feel? I didn't see my parents get emotional about this. I didn't see my teachers. I didn't see my neighbors get emotional. I know what I saw and I know what I think I feel, but I have zero validation.
Am I entitled to
Am I entitled to feel this way? And regardless of which way that is,
right,
for or against, I'm not here to control your feelings. I'm here to give you an outlet. And so we want you to know that you're entitled to feel those things. So I'll let you go ahead and go with the first question.
Okay, this is a question from Fran. She says, what is your conversation like, Mr. Bugs, with your son growing up as a Black man during these times of continued injustice? Is Mrs. Bugs' conversation different?
No, we are actually on the same page. And I've had my experiences growing up as a Black man, and they're continued. And this is why I tell my friends who are my white friends, because my Latino friends go through the same thing. My Middle Eastern friends go through the same thing. My Asian friends, they go through the same thing. And I have prided myself on building relationships all over the world. And I would be lying to you if I told you I don't see color. That's a big lie. We all see it. I'm not going, I don't see color. I do see color. I don't let it control my actions, but I see it. And I have to be even conscious. I have to be conscious of it. I do. Because I'm just going to be honest here. I'm not going to get, I don't see color. Please don't tell me you don't see color. I don't ever want to hear that. You lie about other things too. Okay. But the conversation with Trey is not just Trey. I've got a group of sons. They're not my biological sons, but they're his brothers, basically. And they all live together. And I care about them just as much. No different than my younger brothers as well. But with Trey, we've had conversations with him. This is well before then. This is even when we were coming into being successful, we've always talked with him since he was a little kid, letting him know, son, there's certain things that you're not going to be able to do. Because number one, you're African-American. Because number two, your parents are very successful. And there were certain privileges that he just didn't have, certain things that he couldn't do. And he didn't understand it coming up. I never forget, he wanted us to drop him off to a party. And my only 2 cars I had at home I had 2 Rolls Royces. And I'm taking him to this party and I didn't know and I said, Trey, I can't take you to the party. I've got to drop you off down the street and you can walk to the party. He probably doesn't remember this. I said, because you're an African-American male, you can't be dropped off at this place in the Rolls Royce. You can't. And so those same conversations have gone with what's taking place right now, and that is Trey. You know, I'm not going to tell him he can't have his hair in locks. It's his choice. But here's what I want you to do. Here's how I want you to conduct yourself. I want you to make sure that you keep your rage or keep your anger and don't get combative and have to go through. Here's what happens if you get pulled over, or when you get pulled, because you're going to get pulled over. You're going to get pulled over, period. It just happens, okay, for whatever it may be. But how to conduct yourself, how to keep your hands visible, how not to get combative, how not to cop an attitude, make sure all your stuff is together and things of that nature. And here's the point, Fran, is that even when we tell them that, we know it's not enough.
Yeah, we know it's not enough. Is my conversation different? Of course it is, because, you know, I don't know what it's like to be a Black man. I can only talk about it from my own perspective. And I mostly just want to keep him safe. And I talk to him about just when he's in a situation, if he's ever gotten into a situation, to do exactly and precisely what he is told. The other thing is, I always ask him to consider how it will break my heart if something happens to him. Because, you know, Trey tends to be a little bit of a hothead, and, you know, I've always encouraged his feistiness, because it's a lot like mine. But when you've got to make a choice and being your authentic self in your life, you know, we've got to make a smart choice there. But, you know, I agree with Holden. Most of the time we're on the same page, you know, with this. We just want to keep him and his friends safe. And we want him to understand that there are certain things you just have to do, not because it's right, but because it's necessary.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
There is as a minority living specifically in America, you have to have a survival kit of tools when living.
Right.
Not just getting stopped, but when living. And I was talking to some people the other day, and I said, and it's hard sometimes for those, even my good white friends, and I've got, you know, a lot who can see the struggle because we're so close. At the same time, it's very difficult to understand.
Right.
I watch you give birth to Trey. I was right there. I have no clue.
Right. Right.
And just because I witness, and just because I'm for it, I'm just telling you, and this is not victim talk. I'm a victor. I'm a warrior. I'm not a victim at all.
Right. But thank you for saying that.
You can't understand it. You know, there's conversations that my white friends don't have at night with their spouse. And that is going to bed hoping that your child doesn't get killed or shot by a police officer. Those are not conversations that happen. It's like, you know, the Bill and Melinda Gates children, they don't go to bed at night waking up saying, I hope rent is going to be paid tomorrow. And I just use that as an example because those are things that are so far from their reality of having to deal with. It's not that they're not sensitive or empathetic or sympathetic. It's I can't understand what it feels like to give birth because I've never done it, even though I've witnessed it.
Well, okay, so how do you feel about the fact that the timing of this is interesting? Mm-hmm. You know, we are coming off of a pandemic, and do you think that has anything to do with how people are reacting at this particular time? Because I have to say that I have been, you know, just humbled by the outpour that I have seen from many of our Caucasian friends and many companies and, you know, corporations throughout the world. this is the first time that I actually felt seen, you know, that Black people are seen, that the struggle is accepted and is genuinely understood. And I'm asking, is it because of what we just went through? And perhaps we are starting to understand that even though, you know, that what affects one of us ultimately affects us all, even if it may not be your fault, but it's all of our problems.
That's right. It's all of our problem.
Because even when it's not our children today, it can be our children tomorrow.
Yeah, and it will be.
Right.
It's how it happens. So my answer to that is it's a combination of things. Okay. Let me just give it to you guys of what I don't like hearing. And this goes to your question.
Okay.
I don't like hearing from any ethnicity. Well, you know, you can be just like such and such, and he went to school and he got an education, and look at him. And America is a free country now, and it's equal, and I don't want to hear and all of this excuses. Guys, I'm just being candid with you. That those are facts. But it's not a reality. The fact is, yeah, are we a free country? Yes. The fact is, can I pursue opportunity? Yes, I can pursue opportunity. But what you see going on right now is a combination of, I believe it's a little bit of what happened with the pandemic. People are out of work.
Right.
Okay. People, you know, it's hard to come by jobs. They've been out of work. Economically, they're struggling. Many are struggling, losing apartments, losing homes, being evicted, don't have this or don't have that. And that's a small part of it. The big part of it is institutionally. When you look over a period of centuries, 400 years, I want you to understand what's taking place here. And this is just to give context to it. When the slave trade took place, it wasn't peaceful. They didn't go and say, hey, listen, we'd love for you guys to come with us and get on these ships and come to America.
Please come to America.
Please come and let's do it, and we're going to vote and see.
Yeah.
No, it didn't happen that way. And when they got here, 12.5 million slaves, that was the foundation of the African-American population that's here today. Am I a slave? No, we're not slaves now, but I hate hearing, well, it was so long ago. No, it was the physical component of slavery was the least, it was the least of the two when it comes to the psychological damage and the betrayal and the being in a position where systems, organization, being able to mobilize ideas or even read or write or even have your own name and identity was completely wiped away from you. And it was not only discouraged, it was illegal. And so what happens is you have a complete system of that. And yes, there has been a lot of progress,
Right.
a lot of progress. But just because there's a lot of progress doesn't mean there's enough progress.
Right.
And so, yes, you'll have your Holton Buggses and your Erling Buggses and your Johnny Wimpreys and your Edwin Hayneses and your, and I'm just speaking of a few of us as leaders here. You'll have us, and to some, I'm not going to say we're the exception, we're the example for so many that we want to follow. But the underpinning still exists. It still exists. So when I see people say, well, it just breaks my heart to see so much rioting and so much this and so much that and so much this, I do understand your perspective, but I want to give you another perspective just to consider. How is it that you want people to act in an organized fashion now to think rationally now about organization, mobilization, and having the proper tools when those tools have been stripped away from them. And there's been no system of teaching that level of organization deep down in those communities so that when times do come, they understand how to properly organize them. So you're saying, I'm going to strip it away from you, but now that I need you to do it, I want you to act accordingly. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, and stuff we can get again. What room can a person who was killed on the street go back to get their life?
Right.
I mean,
right.
You know, it's not the same thing.
It's not. It's not the same thing. And like I say, guys, my thing is not calling out victimhood here. This is systematic. And so this is synonymous to me to this. Here's what it is synonymous to. It is synonymous that when I'm gonna tell you what I don't like hearing.
What?
When Me Too movement became the Me Too movement, and I've seen women who have been sexually harassed, who have been raped, and who have been this and who've been that. I can't stand when I hear a man say, she shouldn't have been wearing that. She shouldn't have been up in Mike Tyson's room at that time, or she shouldn't have been flirting, or she shouldn't have had too much to drink. You can't blame the victim and ask the victim to fix what is systematically incorrect.
I mean, that may very well be true, but it still doesn't mean that she deserved to be raped or something.
Right.
So,
but you see what I'm saying here, right?
It has nothing to do with the other.
Yeah, you can't do that. And so, you know, when you look at all of what was going on, what took place when enough women, predominantly white women, it became such an issue, they start taking away their money. They start taking away jobs. You saw what the Me Too movement did. You saw that. Go watch the movie on Bombshell on Netflix. Watch it. It's educational. It shows you when people want to stop something from happening, they can put a stop to it. And so what I don't like the fact that people shed the light on the looting. Do I support it? No.
But you understand.
I understand.
Right.
So when people shed all this light on the looting, it's a deflection, because the same energy that is on the looting is not on what happened systematically of why the racist cop would even do such a thing. That's where the problem, it's not with the looters. Target, do you think Target is going to be hurt? Yeah. Are there going to be some people that lose their businesses? Yes. And I hate that. I empathize and I sympathize with that.
Yeah, but since when is change comfortable?
Right.
Right.
Let me ask you, did Harriet Tubman start the Underground Railroad legally, or was she breaking the law?
Was she risking her life every time she was trying to save somebody else?
She was breaking the law. Why? Because standing and asking and begging oppressors, institutional oppression, to undo the benefit that they're receiving from the oppression, it goes to deaf ears. And so I've got to do what I've got to do. And here's, I believe, what we're seeing today. Now, are there some people taking, I'm not even talking about those. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are taking advantage. And to be candid with you, a lot of the looters are not for the real, are not for the cause. Many of the people that you see, guys, just so you know, are on the other side. Yeah. Many of the people are staged, placed there to do a lot of the damage, to make the cause of Black Lives Matter, or to make the cause of racial injustice when people speak out, to say, look what happens every time they want justice. They loot, they break into places. So don't fall for the smoke screen. You know.
Let's see if we have some questions.
We got some more questions. I don't want to get on my soapbox here.
Babe, you've been on your soapbox.
I do. I have, but this is soapbox time, and today we're going more than an hour. So No, just because this is important. This is important. Okay, this is important. But all right, as a Caucasian or a other race, what's the best thing we can do to uplift and support you during these times?
Thank you for that question. Oh my
It's the
God.
right question.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah. Don't be silent. Don't be silent. I am not saying that you gotta be out on the rioting front lines. I'm not down there. But don't be silent. Start in your household.
Please talk to your kids.
Okay. Have the conversation with your kids.
Your family.
Okay. Not one time, because this is systematic. This is systematic. But silence, I think you said something today, that silence ultimately becomes betrayal.
Martin Luther King said that, but I'll take credit for it.
Okay. Because silence basically is complicity.
It is. It is.
Go ahead.
And I'll just say this too. I've always been the type of person to pick a side. I don't play neutral. You know, leaders in the humble sense, and when you are dealing with your organization, of course, you have to try to maintain some neutrality amongst people. But when it comes to issues, I'm gonna tell you, I have no problem picking a side. I am very strong on my belief system and very strong on the things that I stand up for. And I think opportunities like this give us a chance to show that we really mean business and that we mean what we say. And so in my opinion, if you are someone who's asking what you can do, get on your social media, share your opinions. Talk with your friends, talk with your family members, find out if there are petitions out there in your local communities or even online that you can be a part of to show your support. I mean, all of those things matter, but mainly just don't be silent. Mm-hmm. And do not act like this is not an issue, a real issue that is happening in America that we all should be concerned about.
Yeah, it's a human issue. It just happens to be a human issue within a certain category, just such as we talked about breast cancer. It's a human issue.
But it was the right question. Thank
you. It's the right question.
Whoever asked that.
Yeah. Next question. What type of advice would you have for mental health after this? I couldn't give advice on that. I think if a person has a mental health issue, which is a very serious issue, very serious. And I'm grateful, by the way, that I'm watching more people now consider mental health to be a real health challenge.
It is. We're becoming more vocal about it.
I grew up, I'll just be candid, I grew up with looking at mental health, as not a health issue. It was, you were almost, again, you were scrutinized as well for having mental health. We would call people crazy, or that person's crazy. I remember we had this guy named Mr. Willie. Mr. Willie's crazy. And we would label them because that's what I grew up and that's what I knew, until I got around some people who knew better. And I start to say, oh no, it's no different than, I heard Kanye West talk about it as well. It's just people laugh at him stuff. He said, just like some people have a broken arm or a broken leg, nobody laughs at them. I've got a broken brain. And so seek counsel, seek advice, professional help, if there's some issues that you see that you're undergoing because of this here. Seek professional help. Let me get back to some of these others here. Okay. I have a younger sister in her 30s, and she's fed up with protesting and preaching. She's ready to join some of the more radical groups in dealing with the issue. What advice do you have on what can I do or say to stress the importance of staying peaceful? All right. Again, I think I want you to learn how to separate your anger from certain actions. You have the right to be angry.
There are no judgments on feelings.
I am angry.
Right.
I am mad. I'm furious. I am.
Right.
All right. I am. And I never tell a person or pick a path for a person. However, you need to understand, if you want to join a group, understand the mission of the group that you want to join and its purpose. And if it aligns with what your goals are, then the courtship should start taking place. But being radical for the sake of being radical, being, mad for the sake of being mad, it's not a good reason. I told my son the other day, never make a permanent decision based on a temporary emotion. Okay. And so you can start your radical group from right at home. You can start it right from home and radically change your ideas, radically change your speech, radically change the way you interact, radically change and become the example and that one person, because some of us think that we're not enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we are enough. One person is enough. One person's enough to start it. Okay. This is from Mike Thomas. How do you feel about people saying blacks don't have the same opportunity as white counterparts? Now, let's talk about that. I spoke on that a little bit. It's true. And anybody who says it's not true, they aren't looking deep enough. Okay. It's true, but it's not an excuse. Okay. Because what typically happens, is we look and we'll say, look, Obama was president. See, look. And we'll always point to one example to show how the same opportunity exists. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen the basketball lottery? And you see that the losing team has more balls in the lottery bucket? The team who just won the championship don't even get to join the draft. But they'll take the worst, maybe 12 teams, and they are a part of the lottery with the worst team having the most balls in the lottery. Meaning the probability of them getting the first pick is more. The team with the most wins in the lottery have the least amount of balls in that same barrel, which systematically means they have fewer opportunities to be chosen. And so in some respects, that's how it works when it comes to opportunities between blacks or minorities and whites in some respects. Okay. Well, you say, well, that's not true. How many hedge fund managers do you know of? Do you think that Latino people or black people or other people aren't smart enough with finances? No, it's the system that was already dealt with in the very beginning. The atmosphere in which white men specifically communicate and partner at basic base levels in the good old boy system that's very difficult to infiltrate. And so the opportunities for you to breach into that particular audience or crowd, it's not that you don't have the opportunity, you don't have as many balls in the basket. And so it's just a little bit different. That's all it is. It's different. It's not an excuse, but it's real.
No, it's real.
It is real. It is real. See what other questions we have over here.
Johnny said something.
Okay.
Let me see if you can respond to this. He says, saying nothing is saying a lot. So back to the other point of what can you do if you have African American friends, if you are not a minority and you have friends who are of color, make sure that you are courageous enough to show your support, because this is not a time to be silent at all. This is not a time for neutrality. This is a time for you to step up and show that you understand what is happening in the world. There are a lot of people that are hurting, and a lot of people who need reassurance and support right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure if you ask enough people the right questions, you're going to find a way to make yourself useful or lend some support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I'm definitely taking notice of who is keeping silent, because that's very important to me.
Yeah, it's very important. It's really important. But I am probably, for one of the first times, I don't know why, but I also feel encouraged, because I feel a sense of momentum, not because of looting or any of that. I feel a sense of momentum that sometimes you've got to get the attention. And the thing that I want to tell people here, people say, well, what do we do? And as I told you that, the disproportionate education of how to mobilize and how to organize and all how that took place. Well, let me share with you how to do some of it. Number one, okay. I want you to stop focusing solely on the presidential election. When you want change, okay, you got to remember, change comes two different ways. Okay. Space repetition or emotional impact.
This is emotional impact.
So you can get on the lines if you want, and you can beg and you can say, oh, I want change, and I want, fight for change, fight for change, fight for change, fight for change. And then another episode, fight for change, the same thing. That's space repetition. It's no different than how you learn how to swim. You get in the pool, you have a teacher who teaches you, and you go to lessons, and over a period of time, you now have changed your skill set about swimming. Or somebody can push you in the water, and you learn from emotional impact. And for that 15 seconds, you learn how to swim. What you're experiencing now, somebody pushed some people in the water. That's all it is, okay? So stop focusing solely on presidential elections. Presidential elections put in the president, but there's three branches of our government, okay? You also have to look at your state, your senators, okay? Your House of Representatives. You got to look at your local officials as well, your attorney generals,
vote people.
Your DA, because what happens is sometimes you have organizations or groups of people, no matter what your race or background or political affiliation, focus on, well, here's who I want to put in for president. And I don't get the results that I want. Why? Because it's like you went to the store for to get ingredients for a cake and came back with coconut flour, if you know what I'm talking about. And you left the eggs as well. You didn't finish. You got to finish. Yeah. Okay. And so you got to understand and get yourself educated and understand what branch of government and what does this official do, and so that your voice can get heard at the polls. That's one of the things that you can do, that you can actually impact change, because at least we are a country of laws. Unfortunately, in this case, we're not enforcing the laws, and that's why we've got an issue here. But we are a country of laws, and you can change those laws. And the way that you change them is by kicking their ass at the voting polls. You want to unseat them? Get their ass out of that seat over there on the polls. That's how you can, but don't just go vote one time. Educate yourself, your family, and say, who is it that's going to be city council? What do they stand for? If you want lower taxes in your community, understand who you're voting for. And I'm talking about, home taxes. If you want, better roads, better streets, who's going for that? And understand what it is that you want. If you want tougher laws on how arrests are made, find a candidate. And if there's not one, you know what? You need to get together with someone who's looking for change and have them to be able to identify someone who's willing to go in and fight to make sure that they put those restrictions on respecting the lives of minorities when arrests are made. And we get the wrong ones out. Is it going to be a tough job? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Because that organization, the police, that's a strong organization right there. And that's not white or black, that's blue. And that is institutional, the power and the disregard for life, not just white cops, black cops too, Asian cops, Latino cops. Because when it comes to, there's some great ones, and I'm so proud, and I'm not proud, I am grateful of our police. We need it. But what I'm telling you is that when they put the uniform on, many of them, it's blue against black, it's blue against brown. And so it's tough to break that, right. But we've broken tougher curses.
So do we have any more questions?
I think we do. Let's see here. Oh, they said repeat the name of the Netflix movie.
Oh, Bombshell. Bombshell is with oh my goodness, what is the girl's name?
Man, we're forgetting them all.
Charlize Theron.
Yeah,
Charlize Theron, and who's the lady that was married to Tom Hanks?
I forgot.
Tom Cruise. I mean,
baby, the name of the movie is enough. It's called Bombshell. Anyway, just look it up on Netflix. It's called Bombshell. Look at your phone, see if you've got some questions there. Let me see if I've got some from Mark.
No,
here.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. So the main thing, guys, is have conversations. Don't be silent. Discuss this. If you're angry, talk. Don't just act. Talk first. Have some discussion. Have some conversation. Have some conversation that's tough.
Don't shrink, people.
Yeah.
Don't shrink. When it gets tough, don't shrink. We've got to be able to communicate our way out of this.
Yeah.
And if you shut down, if you ignore, it's not going to help us get to where we need to go. We need to be a little bit more courageous about these things, because this is a human issue. Mm-hmm. Today the conversation is about Black and brown people, but tomorrow it could be about women. The next day it could be about children. Who knows? But we've got to be bigger people.
You have to be, because it dominates us all. And here's the thing I want you to, this is why it's so important, because it doesn't get, I want you to understand my perspective. On my perspective, America has two groups of people that are always protected. I believe that there's, when we talk about classes, and I'm using the economic classes that we are aware of. These are just my opinions, and you could completely differ with me. And I'm not imposing my beliefs on you, but we have what we call the rich, we have the middle class, and we have the poor. It's what they call
it. We've been on every level.
Right? So economically, the rich and the poor are protected. Okay. Why? Well, number one, the rich have all the resources, all the money, the influence, and the majority of the power. And when the rich go out and spend money on lobbying to get their political people in office, do you think that they're submitting people and putting money for laws that work against their philosophy? No, it's for them. Why is it that you think right now in the pandemic, who are the first people that you're hearing about getting all the stimulus money?
That is still back.
The billion-dollar companies, not the middle class. The restaurants who deserve the money, small businesses.
Right.
It's the big companies. Why? That's how it is. There's protection for them always. The bailouts always come to them. That's what happens. You know, we always say, well, you know, when economic hardships come, you should have saved your money. You should have, you know, invested. You shouldn't have been out buying this. You shouldn't have been out buying that. And why did you buy Louis Vuitton? And why did you buy Gucci? And now, you know, it's hard times. Your money should have been invested. But companies make billions of dollars a year are bankrupt in 90 days.
Mainly our banking system.
They shouldn't have been saving.
Right.
And so we saved them, right? Why? Because they wrote the laws to make sure I'm going to be okay. Hey, here's the laws that I want you to back. Here, this is how it works. The bottom is going to be protected. Why? It makes the rich feel good. It makes the rich feel good. Why? I'm making sure that the bottom doesn't fall out. Many of them want to do a lot of great. I'm not saying all. Many of them want to do great. So they're protected. You've got your welfare systems, you've got your Section 8, you've got your food stamp programs. They're not going to fall out and have nothing. There's no protection for the middle class.
And that's the majority of America.
And that's the majority. That's who's struggling the hardest right now.
And that's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. Not the top, not the bottom. It's the middle class. And so, you know, but we can bring about change for that. But you got to go to the polls and vote. Got to go to the polls and vote. This doesn't change. The wealthier you get, it doesn't change. I can tell you right now the things that we experience. Today, we live in a neighborhood that is predominantly white neighborhood. We've been here for 17 years, 18 years.
Since 2004.
16 years. We've got the biggest, most expensive house in the neighborhood. When we first moved here, we were hoping that we can get in and be in the very front, which is the very bottom. It was our goal and dream to live here. And I'm not saying that to brag economically. Do you know still, I listen at the country club that I'm a drug dealer? The guy who owns the second largest house in this neighborhood is 19,000 square feet. Nobody's ever thought of him as a drug dealer.
He's white.
He's a white guy. He's a hedge fund manager. But because I got the most expensive, the best lot in the neighborhood, and
we happen to be African.
We happen to be African American.
We must be drug dealers.
Yes. And I'm sitting, but here's what we did. I was sitting, and just tell you a story. I was sitting on the back at the country club having dinner with a Latino friend of mine. And I just shared this story to give some relevance to what happens every day. And we're sitting there eating dinner, and they didn't know who I was, and they didn't know who he was, and eating lunch. And my table was right next to theirs. And from the country club, you can see my house, and it took 5 years to build this house. And it was a family there. And they turned around, looked at the house, and they said, wow, how long is it going to take them to build that house? They got the kids there. They have no idea who I am. And the guy turned around, he said, I don't know, but he's been building it for a long time. I heard he's in the coffee business. And the other guy, who was his son, who was an older man, probably in his 30s, says, no, he's a drug dealer. The guy sells drugs. And I just basically turned my head and says, no, I actually do sell coffee. They were stunned and they said, oh, you know the guy who owns that house? They still couldn't believe it was me. I said, yeah, it's me, and I own 3 of them in the neighborhood. And they quietly packed up and went inside and had finished their meal inside, took the kids. It was the son, his daughter, and their kids, and the parents, the grandparents, having a discussion about me being a drug dealer. But that's normal. I deal with that all the time. I very seldom have anybody to say, hey, are you a CEO of a company? Are you a businessman? No. So these are the things that we're talking about. So when people don't understand the anger, it's because this is what you live with every day, and you become callous to it. You've got to prove. I often drive my car, and you know what? I drive my car, and when I'm driving my car, in my mind, often what plays in my head is, when I get pulled over, I need proof to show them that I'm the CEO of a company, because I know that they'll leave me alone then.
Well, do you have it in the car?
Well, I have Facebook and all of that kind of stuff, and our website. But I'm just saying, I shouldn't have to think. I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm just shedding light to many of our friends, and even women who don't know what it's like. I'm just shedding light on some of the thought processes that that we deal with. And I'm not one who's suffering from economic disenfranchisement. I'm not one who's living in the economically oppressed and feeling like I don't have a way out, because you can't fight your way out of something that you can't see the light.
Right.
You can't.
Right. And the thing of it is, I mean, you have a lot of experience and a lot of influence and a lot of resources. What about the people who don't have that?
Yeah.
And that's why they have to loot, and they have to riot, and they have to protest. It's
my neighbors today, babe. I drive the Vibe Tesla. Nobody speaks to me. You know why? They think I'm a driver.
Well,
I drive the Rolls Royce because they can't see in the window, right? They can't see in, but the rap Vibe, it's got Vibe all over it, right? The Tesla. And I was telling Ed that they don't speak to me. Why? I'm a driver. I'm a driver, not a black driver, not a white driver. I am an Uber driver. My neighborhood is notorious for speaking to everyone. I drive the Rolls Royce, I drive the Lamborghini, they break their necks to speak. Why?
Well, Fran says, and that in and of itself is a problem. We are so used to it that when we snap and rebel against the stereotype, people see it as we take it too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you just, at some point you just get sick and tired. It's just, it's so humiliating to be sitting next to somebody calling you a drug dealer when you know that's not who you are and what you're about, and they have no idea who you are or what you do for a living, and can sit and have such a callous conversation like that. It just really irritates me.
And some of them at the moment, I'm not saying harm has been. I'm just explaining stuff. I'm here venting too.
Yeah,
I am. I'm venting too, and this is my way of protesting. This is my way. Yeah, we have people come over. We had a guy come over. I called a guy to change light bulbs. We've got 700 ceiling lights in this house.
How do you know the number?
Because I bought them.
Oh.
And I called a guy to change light bulbs, and he comes over, and anytime somebody does something to my house, I call my foreman for the contracting company. We still have a great relationship. because these are it's special lights, and it's not just a light button to screw in. It's a little different, right? You need tools to change it. I bring him over, and he comes over to my other house that's in the neighborhood, and I says, well, let's go over to the other house. And I bring him over here as well, and he's looking at the light bulbs, and my other contractor who's there, who's Robert, who's a white guy, and he looks at me thinking that Robert is my boss. And I've already told him, Holton, he sees my name on the thing, but he couldn't believe a black man. And he didn't mean any harm. But I'm just saying, these are the silent thoughts of it's automatically disqualified for having something great because your skin color does not match up with what I've been taught your skin color should look like, because I haven't seen you on television. I haven't seen you with the basketball or football, or I haven't seen you with the microphone or on the screen. So this is the only thing that and ladies and gentlemen, that's not just white people.
Yeah, that's us too.
That's
Universal.
but that's the system. Yeah. The system, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, that's why it's important for you know, people like Michelle and Barack to be in the White House, so that people of color can see that we can achieve on that level, and then it has some normalcy. Absolutely.
Any other questions before we wrap it up? Okay, I got a couple questions. Have you ever had to deal with racism? Your position as CEO of a company? If so, how do you handle it? Yes, I do. And you deal with it quite often. And let me give you an example. I wouldn't say necessarily racism. Now, I want to define racism from my perspective. Racism is when you are of a different ethnicity, and that is systematically known to be superior or majority. Okay. And you utilize that alone to suppress opportunities for people that are minorities. Okay. Racism and prejudices are different.
Right.
Okay. Right. So racism is when it's power. Okay. And so, you can have a minority who's prejudiced against another race, but they don't have the power to be racist.
Right. So, yes. Okay.
They don't have the power to exercise racism. And that's just my perspective of how I look at it. Prejudices, we all have them. But yes, it happens. It happens quite often.
How do you deal with it?
Well, I'll give you an example. Edwin showed me a video, and it's somebody who's, there was a guy, he wanted to get me kicked out of network marketing because he says our company was growing so fast, and he said this on a bus. He's a president and CEO of another company. That Holton Bugs, yeah, he's bad for our industry, and we're pulling together to get him banned from network marketing. He didn't know that the wife of one of his distributors was a Ibüümerang TSA.
Okay.
And actually, we got some, right after he said that, we start receiving these letters from bureaus saying just nitpicking. But how did I handle it? I went and built a bigger target for him. If you're going to take me down, you're not going to take me down small. You're going to take me down, and the world is going to know. But I pass it off to my attorneys and say, hey, listen, y'all, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to get emotionally involved in that. I can't handle that. Here, take care of this. And I gave it over to our attorneys, and they were handling it. But that's what it was. It was It was purely, now there's a lot of other companies that grow and that are bigger than ours, but because Holton Bugs happens to be African-American, that was the big issue that he had. We have it. There's other things that take place, but I never consider myself a victim. Yeah, because it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to come home and tell you every episode where someone has judged me because of whatever it is, because it's just a way of life.
All right.
It's a way of life for me now, and I just don't even think about it. Another question. Someone asked about a toolkit for survival. When I said toolkit, what I basically I meant that as a metaphor. You've got to have a tool. You've got to have a system of tools. Tools are basically mechanisms that you actually utilize to make a job much easier. So survival, how do I make surviving much easier? Number one, toolkit, always have a phone. Make sure if you get pulled over, don't put it in their face, have it video recorded or audio recorded, whatever it may be. Learning different mechanisms, put that in your toolbox. Hey, why are you pulling me over? And I'll tell you this, there's some people out there who have this militant mindset because they've read a few books or whatever it is, or taken some seminars, and they love to challenge the police officers, verbally, because I know my rights. Well, you do know your rights, but do you want to be right or do you want to be alive? So understand discretion, understand judgment at that moment. Have that as a part of your toolkit, is what I'm saying. I'm not talking about a physical toolkit. I'm talking about things that will help you, that will increase the odds of you surviving an encounter with the police officer, specifically if you're one that feels threatened, if you know you have a nervous energy, about getting pulled over, because I do. I'm just being candid. I don't like getting pulled over at night. Don't ever pull over. If it's nighttime, put your flashers on and pull over to a well-lit store. Any kids out there who are listening to me now, don't pull over in some dark place. Put your flashers on. You drive slow and wait until you get to a well-lit store or corner where there's a lot of traffic. You pull into there, and that is where you stop, because that's just what you have to do. You have to exercise better judgment. Okay. I think we're going to be wrapping it up. Let me see some of the other questions here. How do you interact with a Caucasian business partner who you have done business with for many years that displays the attitude of, well, what did he do when Black people get killed by the police? That is, that's another part of the systemic ignorance, because you have to understand that's what that business partner has been taught. It doesn't automatically mean that they mean harm or that they are against that Black person or that Latino person or that minority person. It means that they're ignorant. Ignorant just simply means without knowing, lacking of knowledge. And so it's incumbent upon you to either set aside some time to have them see the other side. My brother told my mom, he said, this George Floyd, it all started with a fake $20 bill. And I was talking to my mom. I said, no, tell my brother, it didn't start with a fake $20 bill. It started with the cop being racist. And so people are saying, well, what if he hadn't have had the $20 bill, the counterfeit $20 bill? Okay. Well, what is the crime? What if he did have it? What is the punishment for it? Not death by kneeling. No. Then he goes through the system properly. So it doesn't matter, but that's also the same thing of saying, how high was her skirt when she claimed she got raped?
And who's to say that he even intentionally passed a fraudulent $20 bill? He could have gotten it at a bank, right, or at a
right. But I don't even go to those details, because we don't know those details. You know what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is, even if the $20 bill, even if he had it was true that it was a fake $20 bill. It still doesn't mean that he was intending to commit a crime.
Right.
So,
but even if he was, the worst case is he was. The worst case is he was. Is that deserving of death?
It's not.
No. So that's why don't get caught up in the crime of what George Floyd was doing, because that's a distraction.
And then there's this conversation about he could have had pre-existing conditions. Let me say something about that. You know, if he had a bad heart and he hadn't been face down with somebody's knee on his neck, he probably would have survived. And I don't care if he would have died the day after just by natural causes. He should have had the opportunity to die of natural causes.
Right.
And action that was that severe and that violent, in my opinion, is enough to give a person a heart attack. So I mean, I just feel like the police officers are still at fault.
Yeah, I with that, I personally, I don't allow that distraction to come in. One other thing that people say is, oh, you know what? Now you're giving them what they want. They want to pit blacks against whites. And you know, somebody went on Rocksmith's social media and they made that comment. Wow, you're making this about race. No. That statement alone is what they want. They want someone coming in charging people who are upset with race baiting. No, it's reality. Yeah. It's real reality of what's taking place. Right. And so I just don't get involved with the arguments about the minutia of the details, but I'll take my counterpart and say, hey, let me explain a few things to you of why. Educate yourself, become educated, and don't spew out a lot of ignorant statements that you can't substantiate or that you don't really know about. And if it's your opinion, state it as your opinion, but don't state it as a fact.
And I mean, at the same time, we still have to do business, people. We're not going to be able to. You can't change everybody's mind. We live in America. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Mm-hmm. You know, it's great that we can come on a platform like this and have a discussion about it, but we still have to do business. And so you do have to, if a person just wants to be ignorant, you may have to just take that discussion off the table.
Yeah. So, you know, many people are saying, thank you for this platform. And we haven't been able to watch all of these comments or anything. See here, the Cub Foods is known for calling cops on Black people. We have a lot of that takes place. I mean, we're talking about just the root of it. It's systemic. It's opportunity systemic. It's accessibility systemic, of having access to certain things. And downright institutionalized. Right. I don't blame. Yeah. I don't blame a culture or a body of an organization of people who have not had that opportunity to have access to the proper information. Is the information available? Yes, it is. But has it been infiltrated? Has there been a system to say, we're going to go and teach this down from a system standpoint, teach this where we know there are gaps in the information? No, it hasn't been yet. You've got individuals, you do have organizations that have been doing it, but the problem still exists. And I tell you that because I have family. I've got family that they don't know where to turn. They don't know the answers. They don't have access. And they want to live better. They want to survive. They don't want to resort to certain things that they've had to do. But they're frustrated and they don't know where the tools are. They just don't know where the tools are, and they don't even know they exist. And so this is why it takes you. It takes a call like this. It takes a call with 2 people on it. It takes a call with 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, whatever it may be. And I'm not saying this has to be your campaign. It's not necessarily our campaign, but it's our responsibility to give an outlet, to allow people to express themselves, and to give you permission to see it differently. And I hope that from this call, I don't want you to see it my way. I want you to see it her way. I want you to have an additional viewpoint from two people who lead and who have been responsible for leading large numbers of people. And the contacts that I have, the associations that I have with people of influence, and how we get together and we have conversation and discuss similar things about the solution. And we're not financially affected as much, but we're not talking about the money. We're talking about the people that we need to reach and we want to reach, and the strategies that we need to employ of how to do it. Guys, if we don't have enough time to even start talking about where it starts. I mean, how deep it goes.
Right.
But I'm grateful that you chimed in. I'm grateful that you made a comment. The thing I would tell you is vote, understand who you're voting for, why you're voting, and stop voting just because that's who your mama voted for. Make your vote your vote. Our vote is not my mama's vote. It's my vote. It's our vote. And get educated and stop only voting for the biggest prize, because those smaller prizes affect you more. I can tell you that right now.
And don't shy away from these conversations. I hope that you'll continue the conversation in your home, with your family, with your friends, your loved ones, even professionally, if that permits itself. But you know, we can't shrink in these times. We have got to be courageous enough to get to a deeper level of understanding and unification, because it's going to take all of us to solve this issue. It is an issue that affects Black and brown people, but this is an issue for humanity. Yeah. And we have got to change the way that people of color are treated when it comes to law enforcement. We absolutely have to change that. Yeah. So thank you guys for listening. This has been a privilege. I hope we did this topic some justice. I hope that maybe you feel a little bit more connected to who we are and what we stand for, what we believe. That's what we wanted to offer you and to deliver today. So
and we can't be scared. We can't be scared. So thank you guys. We love you. Stay safe out there. Again, come back next week. We'll catch up on
Money Matters.
On Money Matters, and just to give you guys a little insight, we're going to be wrapping up from our home to yours. I think we're going to do a few more episodes, and like your favorite TV shows, we're going to take a season break. We're going to be on hiatus, but I think Erlene picks up her show. What is it called?
What is it called?
Yeah, what's the name?
Chit Chat with Erlene.
Chit Chat with Erlene. Okay. And then we'll bring it back again, and hopefully we'll have a bigger budget, and we do some pretty exciting things, give you some different stuff or whatever it is.
Do you want Mark to put up the flyer?
Oh, yes. Guys, if you want to affect some change, there's an organization called Color of Change. This organization, if you text Floyd to this number, 55156, basically Color of Change now has your contact information. They've been around, I believe, since 2011, I believe, since Hurricane Katrina time, somewhere around there. Mr. Robinson, who was the founder of it, has been vetted by some of, at least my mentor, T.D. Jakes, and several other very high-end people who want to affect change socially. And basically, when issues take place, all of us will be on the same messaging system, giving action, petitions. When petitions need to be signed, it will be more simple. So this is a tool. Doesn't mean that you are for or against, but if you are for, not necessarily just for justice for Floyd, but against what we're talking about, text Floyd to 55156, and you can be at least get information, and they'll update you with information and things of that nature. So Color of Change, we appreciate you guys. We love each and every one of you. Can't wait to see you next Sunday. Stay out there, be safe, stay incredible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.